All right, imagine this. You're heading out on a fishing trip, right? But to a place with so many options. You could be going after some trophy trout in the legendary Pine Creek.
Oh, yeah, Pine Creek.
One day, and then the next day.
Completely different.
You're battling it out with some monster muskie in Cowanesque Lake. That's what we're going to be diving into today. Fishing in Potter in Tioga counties, Pennsylvania.
And you've given us a ton of different sources for this, huh? Local tourism guides?
Oh, yeah.
Detailed fishing reports? Even a personal blog post from an angler who, I mean, this guy clearly knows these waters like the back of his hand.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal, right? We're going to be trying to use this local knowledge to equip you, our listener, with everything you need to plan out your perfect Pennsylvania fishing adventure.
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting about these sources is that they kind of paint a picture that goes beyond just casting a line, right? Like you start to see how local communities, environmental efforts, even fishing regulations, it all plays a part in shaping the experience that you have as an angler.
Yeah, it's not just about, the fish, right? It's about the whole area. It's about the whole experience.
For sure. So let's start in Potter County. That's where a lot of these waterways actually begin. And when we're talking about Potter County, fishing in Potter County, we have to talk about Pine Creek. It's over 90 miles long. It's really more of a river than a creek.
Yeah.
And it offers, such a variety of fishing. It depends on, where and when you actually go.
Yeah, it's not just one type of fishing. I mean, you've got your wild brook trout and brown trout, but then you've also got like smallmouth bass and panfish.
Right. And the guidebook actually mentioned that summer temperatures can be a challenge for trout in the main creek.
Right. So that's where all the tributaries come in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these smaller streams, they all kind of feed into Pine Creek, and they often stay much cooler, which makes them ideal for trout, even in those hot summer months.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about any old streams either. I mean, Cedar Run and Slate Run, they're both Class A wild trout streams. So that means they have naturally reproducing populations of wild trout.
No stocking needed.
Exactly.
Those are the real deal.
But then you've also got Bad Creek, and the guidebook kind of cautions anglers that it has a limestone grinder in it.
Oh, wow.
To combat mine acid runoff.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder that even in these, seemingly really pristine areas, that there's this history of human impact that affects the environment.
You don't always think about that when you're just thinking about fishing.
Right. It just makes you think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So, okay, back to Pine Creek itself. The guidebook highlights a 3.3-mile section. It's in the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon.
Oh, wow.
And it's a delayed harvest artificial lures only. Now, what does that mean for our listener?
Well, delayed harvest means it's stocked with trout, but there's a delay before you can actually keep any of them, right? It gives the fish some time to acclimate and grow bigger. And then artificial lures only. That helps protect them from over-harvesting. It really promotes catch and release fishing.
So we're talking like spinners, jigs, spoons, flies.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as they're artificial.
Exactly. Yep. And then you've also got like the stretch. It's a 2.8-mile no-kill section.
Okay.
It's stocked with trophy trout by the Slate Run Brown Trout Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these aren't your average stock trout either.
No.
These are much bigger fish. They're carefully raised just for this section, so it's a unique experience.
Talk about like a dedicated group of anglers. The source also mentions that Pine Creek is known for its incredible mayfly and caddisfly hatches.
Yeah, those are big.
In fact, it even included a list of all the hatches for the spring, summer, and fall.
Which is
super helpful if you're planning like a fly fishing trip. Oh, for sure, yeah. Because matching your fly to the hatching insects is like the key strategy in fly fishing. So knowing what's going to be hatching is, it can make all the difference.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about Pine Creek, but let's switch gears for a second, talk about a spot that has kind of like a more intimate home stream vibe.
Yeah.
And that's First Fork Cinemahoning Creek, according to the blog post.
Yeah, I liked how the blogger put it. He said it was once his secret spot, but now he's sharing it with the world.
That's cool of him.
Yeah.
So it also has a delayed harvest artificial lures only section. So, some of those regulations still apply. Mm-hmm. And the guidebook actually lists even more options in this area.
Oh, really?
It's got the East Fork, the Southwoods Branch, Freeman Run.
I mean, that just shows you how many opportunities there are.
Yeah, it really does. And it's not just quantity either, it's quality too. Like both Pine Creek and First Fork Cinemahoning Creek are known for their strong spring mayfly hatches. So if you're a fly angler, this is a place you want to be.
That's prime time right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about a stream with a little bit of a comeback story. Cross Fork Creek. It was once designated as heritage trout water.
Oh,
which meant that it had a naturally reproducing population of wild trout. They were genetically unique to that stream.
That's awesome.
I know, right?
What happened?
Well, there was some habitat loss, so the state was forced to actually start stocking it.
It's crazy how fragile these ecosystems can be.
It is. But the good news is that there's been a ton of restoration work done on Cross Fork Creek. They've been adding things like logs and root wads to kind of improve the habitat for the fish.
So they're making it more natural again.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and those efforts are paying off because the upper sections of Cross Fork are actually back to being Class A wild trout waters.
Oh, wow. So they're back. That's great.
I know, right? And then the lower section, it's catch and release, artificial lures only.
So they're trying to protect those fish.
Exactly. And speaking of Cross Fork, I actually got the chance to fish it recently. And it was such a joy. It was just awesome to discover. And I don't know, the fight of those native brook trout was just incredible. And I even landed a sucker, which was a fun little surprise.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love it when you discover a new spot like that. But, I mean, Potter County just doesn't stop there, right? There are even more trout streams to explore.
Yeah. You got the upper Allegheny River, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the source really makes a point to distinguish this from the, the more famous tailwater section. So it's kind of like a hidden gem.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Then there's Lyman Run Lake.
Oh, yeah.
It's stocked with rainbow and palomino trout.
Ooh.
So a good option if you're fishing with your family or if you just prefer lake fishing.
Yeah, those palomino trouts are beautiful. They're golden. It's quite a sight.
And then finally, you've got Kettle Creek. It's a large freestone stream. So that means it has really clear, cold water, flowing over a rocky bed.
Yeah.
Which is, perfect for wild trout.
Yeah, that's classic trout water right there.
Exactly. It's known for having both wild and stocked trout. And it even has, another delayed harvest fly fishing only section. So, I mean, there's just so much variety, even just in that one stream.
Yeah, you could spend a lot of time there.
So we've covered a lot of ground in Potter County, but now let's head on over to Tioga County. And Tioga is known for its big lakes.
Big lakes.
And we're talking big. I mean, Cowanesque Lake, the largest in the county, is 1,085 acres.
Wow.
With no horsepower limit.
For boats. I mean, that's a boater's dream.
Yeah. I mean, go as fast as you want. But what really makes Cowanesque Lake special is the chance to actually land a trophy-sized muskie. I mean, we're talking fish that can grow over 50 inches long.
Oh, yeah. Those are some serious fish.
You could be reeling in like a feisty bass 1 minute. And then battling a legendary muskie the next. And it's not just about those big fish either. I mean, Cowanesque is also home to, bass, perch, crappies, catfish, walleye, even striped bass. So there's really something for everyone.
It sounds like it. I like variety.
And then you've got Hammond Lake. And if you're a crappie angler, this is the place to be. In fact, the state record crappie was caught right here in Hammond Lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's the kind of detail that gets anglers excited.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, sign me up.
And no horsepower limits here either, so you can explore the whole lake. And then finally, we've got Beechwood Lake. It's a little smaller. And 67 acres, but it's still, I mean, it's a great option, especially if you're a trout angler.
Okay, yeah.
And it's electric motors only on Beechwood.
Yeah.
So it's really peaceful, it's quiet, it's good for kayakers.
Oh, so if you're looking for a more relaxed experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we've covered the where to fish, but now let's talk about, how. What does our listener need to know to turn this dream fishing trip into a reality?
Well, you got to have your license, Pennsylvania fishing license if you're over 16.
Yeah.
And then a separate trout permit if you're planning on going for trout, of course.
Right.
Those fees help support conservation efforts that keep these fisheries thriving.
Exactly. And then once you have your licenses, you need to do some research on the regulations for each spot. We've seen a lot of variety here, catch and release, artificial lures only, even special regulations for wild trout.
Yeah, it's super important to know the rules. I mean, it's crucial for responsible fishing, and it ensures that these waterways are going to be healthy for a long time.
Right. And just to highlight a few examples, Pine Creek, it has specific rules for its wild trout sections. The stretch is strictly catch and release. And then, of course, don't forget that separate trout permit, in addition to your regular fishing license.
Lots to keep track of.
Lots to keep track of. But our sources, they also offer some pro tips to help you plan your trip. Like, for instance, the Pine Creek Rail Trail. It actually provides access for anglers who want to hike and fish.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Get some exercise and fish at the same time.
I like that. 2 birds, 1 stone. the Visit Potter Tioga website, it's got all these maps, brochures, which is, I mean, incredibly helpful for, getting oriented and finding those new spots.
And then, of course, you can always check the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission website. They've got detailed regulations, stocking schedules, reports on water conditions.
Super helpful.
Yeah. And those are great resources, but I also recommend checking the Sly Shop reports before you go. They're usually up to date.
Oh, good point.
On what's biting and, what flies are working best. And the staff at these shops, I mean, they're experts. A lot of them are anglers themselves.
Yeah, that's the best kind of knowledge to have, is local knowledge.
Exactly. Plus, you can stock up on gear.
Yeah, support local businesses.
Always a good idea.
And, one of the sources even mentioned that some streams in this region were originally stocked with trout at the request of local business owners, just to attract more tourists.
Oh, interesting. So it's not all just natural. Some of it's kind of like, man-made to encourage people to come.
I know. It's interesting to think about how these fishing destinations are kind of woven into the fabric of the local communities and economies.
Yeah, definitely. It adds a whole other dimension to the story.
It does. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the incredible variety of fishing opportunities in Potter and Tioga counties. We've talked about some of the, key things you need to know to plan your trip.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork.
But this is just the beginning.
There's still so much more to explore. I mean, we've got to break down those famous spots, share some insider tips, and uncover those hidden gems.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, because we're going to do all that and more.
Can't wait. You ready to dive a little deeper into some of these legendary fishing spots?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's start with that DHALO section in the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon on Pine Creek. We talked about those regulations, but let's break them down a little further, for our listener.
Sure. So remember, it's delayed harvest, artificial lures only.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stocked with trout, but you can't keep any of them right away. There's that delay.
Right.
It gives them some time to, get used to the stream and grow bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all about ensuring a healthy and sustainable population, right?
Exactly. And then the artificial lures only part, that really helps protect the trout from over-harvesting.
Right.
It really encourages catch and release fishing.
So what kind of lures are we talking about here?
Anything artificial, spinners, jigs, spoons, flies, tied to resemble insects.
Oh,
no natural bait.
Okay, so no worms, no minnows.
Nope.
All right, got it. Now let's move on to the stretch. That 2.8-mile no-kill section.
Oh, yeah.
Stocked with trophy trout. What makes this spot so unique?
The Brown Trout Club.
Okay.
They're the ones that actually raise these massive brown trout and stock them.
Specifically for this section of Pine Creek.
Yes. So these aren't your average stock trout. These things have been raised to be much, much bigger.
So you're really giving anglers a chance to hook into some really impressive fish.
Yeah. And since it's no kill, all those big trout, they get to thrive, It makes it a truly unique experience.
Now let's talk about those famous Pine Creek hatches.
All right.
Our sources, they actually provide this whole list of hatches for the spring, the summer, and the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, is just so valuable for fly anglers.
Oh, for sure. Knowing when those hatches occur, that's huge when it comes to choosing your flies, your techniques.
Right.
For example, like in early spring, you got hatches of little black early stoneflies.
Okay.
Blue quills, quill gordons, all important mayflies to imitate.
So it's really like a calendar
for
fly anglers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then as you move into late spring, you've got Hendricksons, March Browns, sulfurs, all prime targets for trout. And then you got to remember the caddis flies, too.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, they're active throughout the spring. Species like the gray caddis, the dark olive caddis, the cream caddies, those are all really important ones.
Wow, there's so many options. What happens when summer comes around?
Summer brings a bit of a shift in the hatches.
Yeah.
You'll still see some mayflies like Cahills, pale evening duns, green drakes, but the real showstopper in the summer, that's the trico hatch.
Tricos. Tell me more.
So they're small mayflies, but they hatch in massive numbers.
Oh, wow.
They can cover the whole surface of the water. It's quite a sight to see.
Wow, it must be a feeding frenzy for the trout.
It is, and that's when your fly selection becomes so crucial. You got to use these tiny imitations.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like a size 22 trico spinner, for example, to fool those picky trout.
And then, what about fall?
fall brings another like resurgence in mayfly activity.
Okay.
Especially the blue-winged olives. And you'll also see some caddisflies, especially the larger little sister sedge. And then as the water cools down, you might even see some stoneflies start to come back again.
So even when, the leaves change color, the fish are still biting.
The fishing is still good, yeah.
So we focused a lot on fly fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Pine Creek isn't just for fly anglers, is it?
No, of course not. I mean, spin fishing can be super effective, especially if you're going for bass, or other warm water species. And don't underestimate bait fishing for catfish or even trout.
Yeah, so no matter what your preferred technique is, there's something for everyone on Pine Creek.
Exactly. That's what makes it such a popular spot.
Now, we talked earlier about how important it is to research the regulations.
Yeah.
And our sources emphasize that Pine Creek is classified as a wild trout stream.
Right?
Which means there are special rules in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
To protect those native trout.
Mm-hmm. You got to know the rules, to be a responsible angler.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind our listener about some of those key regulations?
So in a lot of the wild trout sections, catch and release is mandatory.
Okay.
This allows the fish to reproduce, maintain a healthy population.
So even if you catch like a trophy-sized wild trout, you got to admire it and let it go.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all about preserving those wild populations for the future, right? And then also in a lot of wild trout waters, you can only use artificial lures.
No live bait.
No live bait. It's more of a sporting approach.
Okay.
And it helps minimize the impact on those ecosystems.
And some sections of Pine Creek might even have more specific rules, like requiring barbless hooks.
Yeah.
Or only allowing certain fly pattern.
It really just depends. You got to do your research.
Right. That's why it's so important to, look into it.
Beforehand.
Yeah, beforehand. Make sure you're following the rules. Luckily, there are plenty of resources out there to help you stay informed. The Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission website, we mentioned that. It has all the regulations.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Local fly shops are an excellent resource, too.
Sure.
The staff there are usually, experts on the local waters.
They are, yeah. And they can give you up-to-date advice, what hatches are happening, what the regulations are.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, we've spent a good chunk of time on Pine Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's shift gears and talk about some of the other fishing opportunities.
Right.
In Potter and Tioga counties.
Sounds good.
These counties, they are home to such a diverse range of species. They really offer something for everyone, whether you're looking for trophy trout or you're more into battling it out with a muskie.
Yeah, the variety is what makes it so great.
Let's start with those muskies.
Okay.
Cowanesque Lake, the largest in Tioga County, it's known for producing those trophy-sized muskies.
Yeah.
We're talking they're apex predators.
Oh.
They can grow to some incredible sizes.
Just imagine reeling in a fish that's longer than your arm.
Oh my gosh.
That's got to be an incredible fight.
So what about people who are looking for like a more relaxed fishing experience?
Panfish, like crappies and perch, they're really abundant in Cowanesque and Hammond Lakes. They're great for families.
Yeah.
Or if you just want to have some steady action.
Yeah.
Maybe catch a tasty meal.
Don't forget about the bass.
Oh, yeah, the bass.
You got largemouth, smallmouth are all over these lakes. It's a great fight for anglers of, any skill level.
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing, how much variety these counties offer. You could be casting a fly for native brook trout in this pristine mountain stream one day, and then the next day you're trolling for walleye on a huge lake.
You really could. Before we move on, I kind of want to circle back to the regulations.
Okay.
It's always good to remind our listeners about, responsible fishing.
You can never say it too many times.
Exactly. Oh. So remember, you need a Pennsylvania fishing license if you're over 16, and a separate trout permit if you want to go for trout.
Mm-hmm. Those permits help fund the conservation efforts that keep these places going.
Exactly. And remember, the regulations, they change from place to place.
Yeah.
So do your research beforehand. Make sure you understand the specific rules wherever you're going.
Yeah. Those regulations are in place to protect the fish populations and the environment.
Now, as we're continuing to explore these fishing destinations, I kind of want to highlight some of those interesting details and anecdotes that we came across in the sources.
Oh, yeah, those little nuggets that make the story come alive.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
For example, one source mentioned that some of the streams in the area were stocked at the request of local business owners, just to bring in more tourists.
Wow, so it's not all natural, some of it's man-made?
Okay.
Just to get people to come. That's really interesting.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think about how these fishing locations are tied in with the local communities and the economy.
Yeah. Like fishing isn't just about the fish, it's about the whole area, the whole experience.
It really is. Other source talked about the importance of stream restoration efforts, especially on Cross Fork Creek, the one we talked about. That was really impacted by habitat loss.
Right. And those efforts are so crucial, to make sure these streams stay healthy for the long run. I mean, it's really inspiring to see how dedicated people are to restoring these waterways, like Trout Unlimited and the Kettle Creek Watershed Association. They're really out there making a difference.
And I love that story from the blog post about First Forks in Mahoning Creek.
Oh, yeah, the secret spot.
Yeah. It really speaks to, the generosity and camaraderie that you often find within, like, the fishing community. Yeah. It's about sharing the joy of fishing, helping others discover these amazing spots. It reminds us that these fishing destinations aren't just about catching fish. They're about connecting with nature, making memories, and sharing those experiences with other people.
Exactly. It's about the whole experience.
As we continue our deep dive, let's keep those values in mind. Responsible fishing, respect for the environment, sense of community. Those are all essential parts of this journey.
For sure.
We've covered so much ground so far, but there's still so much more to explore.
Oh, yeah. Stay tuned.
We're going to delve deeper into those hidden gems, uncover those expert tips, and equip you with everything you need to plan your own fishing adventure in Potter and Tioga counties.
Sounds like a plan.
We've explored some pretty awesome fishing spots, right? Uncovered hidden gems, talked about the regulations, the resources, all that good stuff. What can help make a fishing trip a success?
I mean, we've given you the tools to choose your ideal fishing spot, whether it's that, that challenging wild trout stream or maybe a family-friendly lake, packed with panfish.
Right.
Something for everyone.
Yeah, there really is. But as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I kind of want to step back for a second and just consider the bigger picture,
Yeah. These fishing locations, they're not just like these isolated pockets of wilderness. It's all connected, right? It's part of this larger, web of relationships, nature, human activity, conservation. It all comes together here.
Yeah. And one example that really stands out to me is how some of these streams are stocked with trout. At the request of local businesses.
Right.
To bring in more tourists, to boost the local economy.
It's an interesting thing to think about. Like, how do we balance those economic interests with protecting these delicate ecosystems? Tough question.
Right, exactly. And then there's also the issue of habitat loss. That's impacted some streams like Cross Fork Creek.
Yeah, really highlights how important those restoration efforts are.
It does. And those efforts, they depend on the hard work of really passionate anglers and conservation groups. They're the ones, out there on the front lines working to protect these resources.
It's encouraging to see that kind of dedication. Shows how much people really care about these places.
It does. It really does. And it reminds us that we all have a part to play, right, in preserving these natural treasures.
Yeah.
Whether it's catch and release or respecting the fishing regulations or supporting those conservation organizations. It all makes a difference. What would you say is like the biggest takeaway for our listeners, when it comes to planning their fishing adventure? What should they really keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is to be a responsible angler.
Yeah.
Leave no trace, minimize your impact on the environment, just appreciate the privilege of fishing in these beautiful places.
Right. And that's what it's all about. And here's maybe a final thought-provoking question for our listener, as they cast their line into those crystal clear waters.
All right, I like it.
What can you do to make sure that these fishing destinations are going to be around for future generations? Something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Something we should all be asking ourselves. We get to enjoy the peace, the beauty of these places. We got to think about how to protect them.
This has been a deep dive into the world of fishing in Potter and Tioga counties, Pennsylvania.
Oh, it has been.
We've explored those hidden gems, shared some practical tips.
Yeah.
Talked about conservation.
Absolutely.
We've given you the knowledge to plan your adventure. But the real journey, it starts when you actually step into those waters and experience the magic for yourself.
That's where the fun begins.
Exactly. So get out there, explore, discover those treasures, and have an amazing time. Happy fishing.
Tight lines.